Addictions don't always happen overnight, and sometimes they happen to people you would never suspect. Addictions are ugly, and they affect everyone, not just the one that's addicted. This is especially true when it's family. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Clayton Bryan.
Hey.
He is a coach at Westmere High School for soccer and also a former educator there as well. But he is also the current minister to the young adults at Fair Park Baptist Church. He'll be sharing with us today about how God brought him and his family through a very difficult time in their lives. So thanks for coming out today, Clayton. How do you handle juggling all that between the coaching stuff and just ministry? Because the ministry that's never ending. You don't really, you clock out, but you don't clock out for that. So
right.
How do you balance that?
Yeah, it definitely has taken some time, I would say. It's not something that, it's not a set hour, right? 8 to 3. Mm-hmm. At school, when I taught, you get there at 7:20 and you leave at 3, and your job is over, unless you grade papers. But I never graded papers after work. I would grade them during my planning period. So, but
blessed to have that.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah, it definitely has taken me some time. I'm still learning. I haven't been doing ministry a full year yet. So,
yeah.
But just learning how to balance it, learning what's important.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, what's your favorite part for each job? What do you enjoy about coaching soccer? And, did you play soccer?
No,
when
actually.
Yeah, because I was like,
You'd be surprised how many coaches coach sports and they didn't play.
Yeah.
But no, I was a track and cross country guy. That's what I did. And coached it for a couple of years as a student coach in college. But I was asked by the soccer coach, his name is Chris Barron. He asked, he's like, hey, I need somebody. He said, you can be as involved as you want to be. He said, I just need somebody to drive the bus for JV games. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. So, yeah, that's how I got involved with soccer, and I love it. I love the girls. They're these really interesting coaching girls. It's different than coaching guys, for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So it brings a lot of challenges, but also just seeing them, progress and grow is, this will be the group now that's going to be seniors, or the group that were freshmen when I started.
Oh, so you have to really see them through.
So it's all kind of coming full circle. And
that's fun.
It's really neat.
Mm-hmm. So. And as a former educator myself, that is kind of a fun part, seeing them as they grow up. You're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, that's what I liked
really
about.
Fun.
I did like a few things about education. Just every now and then you'd have a kid that would surprise you, right?
Yeah.
And you do get this concept, and you do understand that. This is what school is for.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And those are always the bright moments, but sometimes you don't have enough of those. Yeah. And I understand that too. Yeah.
As far as my favorite part about ministry, man, it'd be hard to pick one, getting to spend time with everybody, for even not young adults, getting to invest in the students too. Getting to pour into them and getting to grow together, do life together, the phrase goes. It just, and then getting to see some of them that, maybe we're a little lower spiritually, get to grow as well. It's awesome.
And knowing that means more than anything that was happening in the classroom.
Right.
Or on the field, because this is so much more important.
That's right.
So, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, are you ready to share your story today?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. This is probably the first time that it's been talked about. So, at least in not a family setting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No pressure there.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, Clayton, tell us where does the story start?
Well, it began in a sense around 2011, 2012, and that was when, before we really knew that it was beginning, we had just kind of started to notice things, and we didn't really know what was going on. It didn't come to light of what was going on until probably 2015, 2016, maybe 2014, maybe. The dates are a little bit fuzzy, but, it's around when I was 15 years old or 16.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, wow. So what exactly happened in your family? What happened?
So my dad had been going to the doctor for some back and some knee issues, and he had to have a procedure done, which led to the doctor just prescribing loads of pain pills.
Yeah.
Different types of opiates. And I even called my dad to talk about it a little bit, and he said that the doctor had him on a fentanyl patch, which apparently is only for like people that are, like dying.
Wow.
So he was given stuff that he shouldn't have been given.
Right. Yeah.
So we didn't really know that was going on. He had been taking them for a while because he needed them. Yeah. And then his brain was like, oh. Hey, you have to have this now.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Wow. And so that started when you were like, for you, it was like you said, like middle school age?
Probably 8th grade or so.
Yeah.
I noted like basketball games, really wanting my dad there. And you could tell when he was trying to get off of it by himself. Yeah. A typical man thing. Like, I'm going to bow my neck and grit my teeth and I'm going to get through this. And we knew something was up. He wasn't there. He was there, but he wasn't there. Right. And then you could tell when he was back on the pain medication because he was himself again. Yeah. So just seeing, that change was difficult. Man,
what made it like when it finally came to light? You said it kind of came to light, like it was obvious. Maybe did y'all have a confrontation or something, like a intervention of sorts, or like?
I think my mom found some in his jeans pocket, if I remember correctly. And it took a while for us to understand, what was going on. With addiction, you don't understand that it's a sickness. Maybe not that, you didn't mean for this thing to happen. Right. And so at first we were pretty torn up. We thought that he was just, abusing or whatever. And that was just not the case. And I think it's also our family, we were the perfect family, right? Like we were what you would call like the storybook, like with the mom and the dad together and the 2 kids and the house on the hilltop, literally.
Did you have a dog too?
Do what?
Did you have a dog too?
Yes, we had 2 dogs. A Chihuahua and a rat terrier. And, all of us serving the Lord in some way. My dad taught Sunday school for years. My mom serves in the church. My sister and I now are both in full-time ministry.
Yeah. Did she go to seminary recently?
Yes, she has a seminary degree. Yeah. I'm currently working on one. Yeah. And I think Satan knew what our family was going to become for God. And he was going to try his absolute best to stop this from happening. Yeah. And I'm not saying that as a brag or whatever, but I think it's, we were trying to do work for the Lord, and Satan knew that. And he wanted to do what he could, So by God's grace, that he didn't tear it up. So. Yeah.
So what made that season like particularly difficult? Like it's obviously like wow, especially a parent. I know it seems like you really looked up to him, and
my dad was and is my hero. Yeah.
And so to see that struggle, like what was that like for you?
It was very difficult at first. The first little while, just knowing that he was going through that, and that it was something that, again, it took us a minute to realize that it is a sickness, Yeah. And so at that time, I'm thinking, just stop, right? Like, just quit doing it, And now that I'm older and know more, it's obviously not that easy, right? But it was difficult because you just wanted him to be honest. It's like, why didn't you just tell us? And B, I just wanted him to get better. I wanted him to quit. And it's not that easy.
Yeah. Did y'all have conversations with him about that? Like, because I know for him, he's probably thinking, I'm not an addict. Like, just that part of, I'm not struggling with this. I can, like you said earlier, like he could see there's signs, or now you look back and there are signs where he's trying to quit on his own. Because I'm sure he's thinking, like, never in a million years, I think myself to be in that position, and like, just trying to like, just reconciling that, no, this is my reality, and I need help beyond my own willpower because this is something that's deeply affecting me.
We did have some conversations. Those came later, right, in the process. Once we understood ourselves what was going on, and the whole family, we did have some conversations that I think were, they were helpful.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So how, as a, like for your family, like how did this like impact Especially what about during the time you didn't know, and then during the time like when it became an unknown thing?
Well, like I said, when I was middle school age and in early high school, wanting my dad to be present,
right?
Because he had always been, we would spend so much time together, even if it was just going to work with him. Like, I guess he did flooring. That's part of why it's why his body was so torn up.
Yeah.
He's always on his knees and his back. And even if I just was going to work with him, like, we had a good time.
Yeah.
And then it became like, basketball games, he wasn't there. And, when I would go to work with him, it wouldn't be a good experience. And just, he just seemed, kind of miserable. So, but then when it kind of became, so obviously I was pretty torn up, wondering what's going on. And then when it came to light, it was worse in a sense. Like, well, finally I knew what was going on.
Yeah, so there's relief in that.
Yeah.
But then it's like,
oh, this is what's happening. And I was pretty torn up for a while because, my dad, like I said earlier, he was my hero, and he still is. But just knowing that was happening, it really, really tore me up, and the whole family and everybody handled it in a different way. My sister and I handled it very differently. And my mom, everybody has a different relationship with dad. Obviously they were married. And so she took it pretty hard. So,
what was her response?
My mom she was pretty torn up, and it's pretty hard to go back and talk about it and think about it. But, there were a lot of nights that she was, crying. Mm-hmm. And there were several times that I remember me just sitting in my mom's bed, just holding my mom while she cried.
Yeah.
And, it was real hard not to be bitter.
Yeah.
Because of that. And my mom and I have a much different relationship after that too. We became much closer through that as well. Yeah. Not that we weren't already close, but
but it's just a different.
Yeah. And so they were separated at the time. Like, my mom said, Clay, you need to I need some space.
Yeah.
And he was living with my grandparents for a while. So it was me, my mom, and my sister, in the house. And I also struggled with bitterness towards her too, because I was like, well, if we're trying to fix this, why are we separating? Why are we, and, thank the Lord that, he saw fit to work in the situation, and they never went through with any kind of divorce or anything like that. I was very blessed.
Yeah.
But everybody handled it in a different way.
Yeah. So when did things start to kind of turn around? Because just because it came to light doesn't mean that was a turning point. That was kind of in a way the tip of the iceberg for everybody. Yeah. So when did he start, on the path to recovery?
So he did go to a rehab facility, which was so hard. I mean, that was just seeing him there and going and visiting it was really hard to see that. But I think it helped. And there were ups and downs, right? Like, he would get out and he would be clean. And then with any addiction, there's always triggers, right?
Yes.
And, so he would see somebody at work that he used to get from when the prescriptions ran out, or one of his employees that did flooring with him, like, he would get some or whatever. So it took him a long time to get fully away from that. And then he did get on some medication to help, like, to taper off.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it's called, but it's like little strips, and you cut the strips over time. And that I think that helped for a long time, and that's what eventually, that and prayer and giving it to God,
Yeah.
That was how it kind of eventually phased out. Like, it was several years of up and down. Like, we would have a victory and it would be going well, and then boom, and we'd have victory, and then, so after about 2 to 3 years of that, it finally became like, okay, Dad he's recovering,
Wow. So. I mean, on the one hand, hearing that time frame is kind of a two-edged sword to me, because on one hand, you're like, oh, 2 to 3 years is not that long. And then on the other hand, you're like, oh, 2 to 3 years is kind of long.
When you're living it, it's an eternity.
It's because you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, this could
you can't
be,
see the end of the tunnel.
You don't know if it's only 2 or 3 years. You're like, is this the rest of our lives?
Right.
Like, are we ever going to get our dad fully back? I mean, Yeah.
That's the same. Like when I was in education, like I liked parts of it, but for the most part, I really hated it. And the only reason I got into it was because I wanted to coach. I loved coaching. And so, man, those 3 years were like every Sunday night I dreaded going to bed because I knew I had to wake up and do it all again. And it was just, you think, God, please you pray, God, get me out of this. Help me. Show me something else I can do. And, now looking back, it's like, man, that was a fast 3 years.
Yeah, it was only 3 years from my life. At the time, we're like, oh my gosh, long as 3 years of your life. So
terrible.
Interesting what perspective does or what angle of the lens you're on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So during those times where like it was up and down, like what did you do? Like, and I know you're probably thinking like, is this ever going to get better? Like, what was going on during that time? How were you like able to survive it?
Well, I'm big on, and this is where this comes from, on reaching out to people. Mm-hmm. In young adult ministry, you're dealing with a whole lot of different struggles because you've got people in very different stages of life.
Yeah.
And I tell them all the time, if you are struggling with something, please reach out. Like, talk to somebody, get some counsel. And this is where I started that. My Uncle Kyle, my dad's brother, many a phone call, many a, talk with him. And then my best friends, Noah and Dylan, they helped me a lot. They both had gone through some things in their life. And my buddy Noah, his parents were divorced, and he gave me a lot of perspective, and even if it was just to hang out, and to get away. Me and Dylan, we worked out a lot together during that time at Anytime Fitness down the road. And so it was really good to kind of get away, and then also to pray together, like just to, and they were able to, help me through it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I had tried to do it by myself and, just, get over it or just, try to pray and hope it gets better, like it, might not have, for me at least. Yeah.
Or sometimes if you, quote unquote, dealing by yourself, you just kind of ruminate on it and dwell on it. And, and if it's the situation, you can't think it out of the problem, and scripture tells us to dwell on the good things. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, by dwelling on the actual problem, all you're doing is really saturating yourself in anxiety and worry. And that's not what scripture tells us to do. Right. So, yeah. So it makes sense that it doesn't work, Yeah.
And my mom too, like, just she and I spending time together and, just talking through it, praying. And she told me on the phone last night when I called her, or night before last, I called her to talk about this. And she said, Clayton, I was mainly worried about you. And I started to tear up. I'm sitting on the couch with Gracie, and she was like, I was just worried that this was going to destroy you. And at the time, I wasn't thinking about, I was kind of thinking about me, but I was more thinking about her. I'm like, this is, and leaning on her, us leaning through it, going through it together, and my sister too, it was good to do that for sure.
Yeah. Do you think their advice, like your friends' advice, even your mom's, like during their time and their encouragement, do you think it would have been different if they were not Christians?
That's hard to say. Probably, sadly, a lot of the world decides to, hey, this is going on. We're getting a divorce. Yeah. In my family, divorce is not an option. Yeah. It doesn't happen. It doesn't matter. And I think a lot of people, they get the slightest inconvenience and they forget the covenant that they made with God, with their spouse. And I'm not saying that was a slight inconvenience. It was a massive inconvenience, but just, I think that they might have said, well, I think you should, not talk to your dad for a while. And it was hard to talk to dad, it wasn't always the easiest thing. But he was my dad and I loved him, Yeah. But other people might have, y'all just need to separate, y'all need to get a divorce, y'all need to whatever, and I think that would not have been the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. So what did you guys pray for during this time? And how were you processing that? And what were your conversations with God like?
Well, at first I was very mad, and praying it was less praying and more me just venting and yelling at God, like, how could you let this happen? why is this happening to me and my family? Why is this happening to my dad? And then over time, it became more of a prayer for healing.
Yeah.
And a prayer for restoration and redemption, and a prayer of thanks. Like, I eventually was thankful that was all that it was. Not all that it was, but you know what I mean? Like, it could have been way worse. I mean, we're talking, it was bad, but almost everything could be worse, right? And I was just thankful, thank you, God, that this is not happening, or he's doing this or whatever, So, and it took me a while to realize that God still loves us. He loves our family, and he is going to provide for us. But once I did, I was just, thank you, God, for loving us and for remembering us, So, even when something bad happens, somebody gets sick or whatever, the case may be. Yeah. God still loves us. He is good even when life is not. And so I think that's something to remember, that,
Yeah. How did you come to that conclusion though during that time? Because I know it's easier now to look back and say yeah, God still loved me and he loves me now. But in that moment, how did you come to settle in that and be at peace with no, God is loving me right now? How did that come?
I really don't have a specific time that I could nail down. I think maybe had we done this podcast, 7 years ago, maybe. But, my wife jokes with me about how bad my memory is, and it really is bad. But, and especially when it's something you don't really want to remember, right?
Yeah.
But I just remember there being a moment that it just kind of clicked. I don't know if it was a sermon that I heard or what, but it seems like it happened at church, and it was just clear to me. It's hey, God still loves you, and he loves your dad, and he loves your mom and sister, and he is going to provide a way out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, just how you described it is sometimes the Lord just literally just puts it in your heart,
right. Yeah.
And it's just all of a sudden, you just know, yeah. Really cool. Well, was there anything else that you found that was uplifting and that kind of kept you going during that time? Anything other than your good wise counsel and your mom?
Yeah, I mean, it just remembering that God gave his son to die for us. He was tortured on a cross, and he looked at it for a while, and then he eventually turned away because he had become sin and he couldn't look on sin. And I just think that is so much more powerful, than what we went through. And while, you wouldn't wish that on anybody, what we went through, but I also wouldn't wish, Jesus' sacrifice on the cross for us either on anybody else, know. And so just a reminder that, it could have been, so much worse, right? Jesus did the ultimate sacrifice for us, went through the ultimate pain and suffering, and, for everybody, that he knows us, but, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Were there any songs or anything else or any verses or things that maybe you were listening to or reading at the time that also fit into that?
Yeah. So there's the song from the movie Fireproof. And it's,
good. I liked it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's While I Wait.
Yeah.
While I'm waiting. Yeah. That one. I listened to that a lot. And then also Praise You in the Storm by Casting Crowns. Yeah. Those radio songs, back in the day.
Yeah.
That Praise You in the Storm is still one that I'll turn on every now and then and just worship. And that's one of my favorite songs because of the sheer amount of times that I listened to it in 2000. Yeah. 15.
I'm sure it still packs the power from that moment.
Right. And brings back a lot of memories and so on and so forth. Yeah. And then also just digging deep into the Word, I had to make a decision. Am I going to use this situation to draw away from God, or am I going to use this situation to draw to God? And a lot of that didn't come from myself. My family, my mom, my grandmother, the church that I went to, they were all very much pushing, get in the Word, get in the Word, get in the Word. Yeah. And eventually, I did. And so a lot of Psalms, a lot of Proverbs, and even Lamentations. Because Lamentations is all about all these bad things are happening. Yeah. We did all these bad things, and this bad thing is happening. And then 3:22 of Lamentations says, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion," says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. And I've had that highlighted in my Bible app and in my Bible since then. And that verse, that section, really was
powerful.
Big time.
And what's interesting, like, for one, I'm like, sharing, you're talking about Lamentations. A lot of people don't this book in the Bible. It's not really preached out of.
Right.
And so I'm like, wow, like the fact that you somehow stumbled upon it. I was like, wow. But I think the verses you shared, though, like, we do hear those a lot, like that phrase, a lot, the things that are in there. And man, it's good stuff. But I also don't think people realize like what a lament is. You're lamenting, you're kind of like remorseful. And that whole book is about that, which is interesting when you think about the history of the Jews, if anyone knows anything about that, because the books of Jeremiah and Ezekiel and a lot of the minor prophets are all about like how wicked and awful, the Israelites have been towards the Lord.
I think they had 8 just kings out of all 40 something.
But Lamentations is where they're like finally in remorse. So they're lamenting, which is, I would say, the proper response to repenting.
Yeah.
Like you should have that if you're actually repenting.
That's right.
So I think it's awesome how it's included in the Bible. And I'm like, wow, how did Clayton, this young man here, because like you're like even younger then. You were like,
I don't really know. Maybe my sister, she's very knowledgeable, and at the time she's still ahead of me, but at the time she was way ahead of me, and it might have gotten it from her. I don't really remember, but when I started reading the first couple chapters, I was like, this ain't gonna help me, because it was all about like, oh, we've done all these terrible things, oh, this is bad, this is the wrath of the Lord is coming. I'm like, well, dang,
I'm already feeling the wrath right now. It's not very helpful.
Right. And then you get to chapter 3 and you're like, oh, he loves me, and just wait on him and he's gonna act, so
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's a word in itself right there, because if you're a person listening and you're like, man, the Bible's a drag, or it's like really hard to like get into and like see what people are talking about, just hang in there. Just read another chapter. Like you'll get it. And furthermore, pray before you read, because the Spirit will illuminate things that you need to hear and see and direct you to what verse you need to do. Maybe it is just another verse down, or maybe it's just the next chapter, or maybe it's just the next page. But the Lord's, there's always something good in there. So yeah, let that be. I'm glad that you shared that today about that. And I think I know we talked before, like I think there's a verse from Job you also have from like 13:15 about though you slay me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, though he slay me, I will still hope in him. I believe is how it goes.
Do you remember did you read the entirety of Job, or just like that part from Job?
I have read the entirety of Job.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Throughout time. I don't know if I did
at that time,
but I remember like going through he had lost everything. And his wife told him famously, curse God and die. Yeah. It's like, just end it all, Job. And he was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to keep on praising him, because he gave me all this stuff and he chose to take it away. He's God. Yeah. I'm not, Yeah. And I think that's a good place for us to be, is to realize that we have no control over anything. Like we don't get that choice. And I think a lot of people don't want to give up their control. They want to feel like they have full control, but Job gave it up, and then he ended up getting it all back double. Yeah. And so, and I'm not saying this can happen to everybody, but in the end of the day, the Lord is going to provide, So.
Did you know that Shane and Shane have a song? Do you know about Shane? Do you know Shane and Shane?
Yes, I know Shane and Shane. I don't listen to their music like religiously or anything. But yeah, I know. I'm sure Casey Moore is probably fidgeting right now. His antenna's probably going off. He loves Shane and Shane. Yeah,
because they have a song called "Though You Slay Me," and it's about that passage there. So it's pretty cool. Yeah, but that particular verse though, like though he slay me, I will hope in him. What is that? What did that mean to you?
I think it just made me realize that like. Well, first off, I'm not the only person to go through something like this, right? I think a lot of times when we go through something, we think we're alone, right? And, Job and trillions of other people have had that same response, or at least something close. And it just, seeing his faithfulness through that book, that, Satan was like, "Hey, let me test Job." God's like, "Okay, do it," like, because I know that he's gonna keep going. And I think that was like, looking back, did God know that I was gonna make it through? And I know that he knows everything, but it's like, how did he know? I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I see Job's response, though he slay me, I'm going to hope in him. And that wasn't my response in the beginning, but throughout the ups and downs, I really realized that, to lean on God is better than to not,
Yeah. I mean, what else is there?
Right.
What else is there?
Yeah.
Man. So what did this season teach you about God and who he is and just his character?
It really showed me that, that he loves me and that he's going to provide. The more that we trust in him, the more he is going to bless us in a sense. And it just showed me that he doesn't leave us, where we are. There's a phrase that Jesus would meet people where they were. Like, God meets us where we are, but he doesn't leave us there. And I think that's very important. That God he wants to bless us and take care of us, but also, he's going to test us as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you're going to be a child of God, and especially if you're going to be a servant, like, you're going to be going and doing, and, he wants to make sure that you're in.
Yeah.
Right? And some people may take offense to that or may take issue with that, but I don't. Like, if I was going to have a soccer team, we're going to have tryouts, right?
Right.
And we're going to put you through some grueling workouts and see what you can do, right? And because we want to succeed. And I think that's the same thing with God. Like, he's going to build his church, and he doesn't want people in it that are not fully committed. Mm-hmm.
And I would even take a slight left turn here, but even the purpose of dating or courting is a test and a trial in itself before marriage. You're trying to say, you're testing out, is this person worthy? Or, are they going to be able to, handle me, and we can be in this coveted relationship together?
Right. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a series right now with our young adults. It's called While I Wait. And I did not plan. This did not line up, It just kind of happened that way.
Yeah.
And I had been praying because we had just finished a series, and I'd been praying, God, show me what do I need to preach on. And he put this in my path, and we've been going through it. And I think it was a good reminder for me as well, just to trust God in the waiting, Yeah. And, it's big.
And you're, saying just a minute ago about these trials we have, these testings and whatnot. Sometimes I feel the purpose of that is just to keep us humble, because a lot of times, especially like you said earlier, like your family was the quote unquote perfect family, the ideal, what people would think is, what to look up to. But we have these things, and it's it's almost like we're just a reminder that that thorn in the flesh of we're not perfect, that we need the Lord, and that yet he will be there for us. I also find purpose in that as well.
To whom much is given, much is required.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
and having that brought to your attention and having it there too.
Yep.
So yeah. The Lord is good. The Lord is good.
Yes, he is.
Very good. Well, is there anything you would tell someone today, if that was facing the same reality that you and your family went through? Like, what would you tell them today?
Man, just don't try to do it by yourself. Trying to, just get through it on your own is a surefire way to fail.
Right.
And talk to somebody, get in the Word religiously, literally, just get in there and start reading, spend time with Jesus. Pray. You're not going to know Jesus if you don't talk to him. Right?
That's right.
So spending time alone, free of distraction with God, he will use his word, and he will use the Holy Spirit, and he will comfort you, and he will bring you through it. But one of the bigger things is to reach out, like, not being scared of, they're going to think this, because I'm going through this. No, most people just want to help, especially in Christian circles. Like, I know if somebody reached out, it doesn't matter what they could tell me. Somebody in my young adult ministry, like, I don't care what you did. Like, let me help you,
Yeah.
And so, and I think part of that comes from what I went through, because people helped me. And some people don't have any help,
Yeah.
So I would say reach out, find somebody to reach out to, and just spend time in the Word, more the Word than anything else.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing this. This is I know a very painful season of your life and your family's life. And I just know that wasn't really easy to share about, but thank you for sharing. I know it's blessed somebody out here listening today.
I hope so. I hope somebody can get something from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And thank you for the reminder that, that God really does love us and he's there for us even when these unexpected things happen, that God is always there and we need that reminder as well.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
My name is Clayton and this is my story of the middle.
I'm your host, Brandy Bostic, and you've been listening to the Up From the Muck podcast. If you want to stay in the know, click the subscribe link in the show notes. Oh, and you want some merch too? Be sure to check my website link or Patreon account, also in the show notes below.
Psalm 40 verse 2 says, He brought me up from the desolate pit, out of the muddy clay, and set my feet on a rock, making my steps secure.